is like really terrible self-talk. Really terrible self-talk. Like wake up at 3 a.m, just like, oh, I effed this up, like, and like reviewing the playbook.
Thank you for being honest.
Because we're all doing it. Well, I think maybe that's why I didn't even mention it, like in some ways, because I don't feel like I'm so unique in saying that, but I think like it's easy to forget that, like not everyone necessarily names that, but no, like I will complete candor, like my negative self-talk can be absolutely horrifying. And that's actually, when I say that this year has been so much better, that self-talk has been so much better.
The reality is, those of us in front of the camera, behind the camera, many of us in professional settings all have that negative dialogue. My next guest is actually the editor and director for my documentary, which you should totally watch. But we share our personal journeys through that documentary making, but also how negative self-talk continues to interfere in our life. I am super excited and honored to be interviewing Mari today. What seems to go back a really long time, it's really only been a couple years, but I remember the first time you said to me, we were going on the trip to do the documentary. Mari is the filmmaker, the editor for the documentary, and she said, oh, you don't know me? I know you really well, because she had already gone through all of the footage. But we got to know each other and kind of connected on that trip. So tell us a little bit about you as a professional woman, and then, you know, me, I'm going to go deep into who you are at the core, but introduce yourself.
Well, I feel awkward already because I'm used to being on the other side of the camera, and I'm like, where do you want me to look?
Right.
Is there, that way? Okay,
yeah,
I should
when
look
you're
at
talking to me, or, you know,
can I
either
just
me
talk
or
to
that
you
one.
or to that camera? Okay, so introduce myself. I feel like even that feels like a complicated question, because I do, as you know, myriad things. I am a total novelty seeker, and I would say like this year thus far, I have the coolest mix of work, and I'm loving every single thing I'm doing. It's innovating because I'm doing a lot of different things, but I love the mix of things. Should I list those things? It just feels like such a wild...
With your SAT words, go ahead.
Let's see, so I'm teaching graduate social work at UCCS, and I'm a filmmaker, so I'm always kind of trying to find the intersection of storytelling and social work. I'm doing that. I do a little bit of therapy. A lot of the times I walk with folks. I got a grant to make films with young adults exiting homelessness, and that is probably one of the coolest projects. What else do I do? And there's a really amazing organization in the Springs called Youth Documentary Academy, as you know, and we get professional filmmakers out from the coast to make films with teens, and they're usually around like social justice topics and mental health topics. And then we program them in community to have courageous conversations, like with not just other teens, but adults that weren't as brave as these young folks are to have the kinds of conversations they're having.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about how filmmaking is actually therapeutic, right?
I think one thing that, so I started filmmaking in the Air Force. Like I knew that was going to be my job when I went into the Air Force. Like the only job that I wanted to be a combat broadcaster. And one thing that was really interesting to me, especially talking to men of a certain age, because as you know, having been former military, like we're predominantly surrounded by men. And they would get on camera and share stories with me that were so vulnerable and so intimate, and yet wouldn't go to therapy. and I'm like, you know, I remember one in particular, I was in, it was like an advanced technical training, and I was in the Maryland area, and I decided to do a story at a firehouse, and I interviewed this like fire chief, like burly dude, like, and I'm like 22, 23, and he told me this story about a young girl that had perished in a fire that was the same age as his daughter on Christmas, and it just, he got really emotional and he teared up, and I'm making assumptions. I don't know whether or not he goes to therapy.
Right.
But, you know, I was really struck by his willingness to do that, and I'm like, wow, there's something really potent in this process. And then I decided to go to social work school to be a graduate social worker. And I think that what I realized is like the stories that we tell ourselves are so potent. And there's one simple shift in therapy versus asking someone to make a film with you. So like I go to therapy because I'm effed up or something's wrong, or I'm asked to be part of a film or a film story because there's something like worthwhile or valuable about me worth sharing. And that is like a really simple difference with like profoundly different consequences. And so, I try to get really creative in the ways that like we look at therapy and how we purvey it. And doing film stories, I think, has been one of those ways. As a matter of fact, like doing your film story, can I share one of the most memorable things to me about it?
I'm obviously, an open book.
Well, we were in Florida, and I separately interviewed, different members of your family. And we, your family members shared some really vulnerable things, some things that felt like maybe they hadn't even shared with you before. And you had even made, I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but like you had made some assumptions about like their grief process even, and like how they're feeling or the intensity of their grief, because you guys weren't really all sharing it seemed like, with each other. And you, I feel like, learned that they were intensely grieving and didn't want to put it on you. And so like, in the way that she learned that was like, so I did these separate interviews, and then late that night, Christy's like, can we watch them all together? It's like 10 o'clock at night. And I had never like had people watch raw interviews before, especially because like I was alone doing these interviews with your mom, with your brother, with your dad, and I was nervous. So I was like, oh my gosh, I have no precedent for this. This was really unfiltered. And I felt like there was a shift after watching them. And it was one of the most beautiful things that I think I've ever witnessed. And it's really influenced me even to this day in the work that I choose to do, and thinking about that process as a type of intervention. Because like I even think about like, had you had a family therapy session, like would you have had those kinds of conversations? And it was just, it felt like you got to learn pieces of the story that you didn't know prior to that point, and so did they. And I don't know, I'd be really curious for you to reflect on that.
And I also want to mention the reason we decided to do that is because the footage that we had of my mom, and I do have some tears coming up, the footage of my mom that we had showed her in a negative light of like kind of not understanding grief at all, because she was
like prior to us doing the interview,
prior to us going to Florida, and then I was like, I knew that her intent and her, her heart was pure and loves me and wants to understand, but the way that it came out in the B-roll or film that we just were doing on our own, it just showed her not understanding grief, just, kind of cutting it off, talking about grieving her dog. And I think this happens a lot in families. Like, people will be hurt or offended by something a family member says and never really get to. And as soon as you got in the room and interviewed my mom, it shifted for you as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think I had told Christy, like I was watching, so they had done this film shoot without me in Florida. She and Jada had done it. And, I had watched this footage where, like Christy was saying, that her mom started, when she asked about like her grieving of her grandkids, she immediately started talking about her dog. And I was like, oof, like I felt oof for Christy. and I don't, and I remember texting you, like, oh, how are you feeling? And we did this interview, and like without you in the room, your mom, oh my goodness, her grief. Like she was so demonstrably upset. Like very big feelings, like really big heart and so much care. And we had just, I guess, kind of maybe created a different day. Well, what her mom said is that she didn't want to put her grief on you.
Right.
That like she wanted to protect you as the mom. And like, man, it just shows you like how many different stories we can tell about something and how many gaps we fill in and assumptions. And like, even though like I feel like better as a professional in this space. Like, you're still the daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm curious, like, what it was like for you having seen that interview, like the second interview.
It was validating for me. Like, I knew, like, there's never been I was never angry at my mom, but I did feel like, why can't I connect? Why can't I get her to engage
Mm-hmm.
in that pain with me? So it was validating for me that, you know, everybody's got their own story.
And
right?
here she thought she was protecting you.
Right.
You know, not
Right.
being cavalier, like protecting you.
Yeah. Yeah. So this interview is supposed to be about you. And you just successfully turned it around. So, you've seen my journey. You've seen what I built here with Mentally Strong.
Mm-hmm.
Where in your life do you feel like wish you had more mental strength?
Wish I had more.
Mm-hmm.
I like that.
In the
Question.
past, you know.
Yeah, it was interesting because it's almost sometimes I think more vulnerable to be like, these are all the ways I'm strong. You know, it's actually easier to be like, no, this is the area that I suck in and need improvement. I feel like this year has been a shift for me in my own mental strength. Mm-hmm. And I've been trying to figure out, like, since you asked me to do this podcast, it's been like a really great and interesting inquiry for myself of like what has shifted. And I would say it's like it's shifted in a way that I'm experiencing more peace.
Okay. And what do you attribute that to?
I had this, well, first of all, I have an amazing relationship that I'm so lucky to have, that I feel so incredibly nourished by, that it helps me take risks because I know I have a soft landing, and I feel really grateful for that. So I have to attribute some of it to that relationship. But also, I kind of woke up, and I think maybe this is something that for some people comes with age. Authenticity is so important to me, and that's also why I was so drawn to doing this film with you. Like, when we had just done your first interview, when I was just kind of like consulting, I was like, holy shit, man, like you are the full story, and you don't try to make it pretty and always just palatable. Like, you are so authentic, and I was so drawn to that because it's something I so deeply care about myself. But I feel like, you know, there's always a certain level of expectation, you know, if we want to feel like we belong, to perform in some ways. And we all do it. As authentic as we want to be, like, we all perform in certain ways. Like, you know, at a job interview, you know, if you're feeling super shitty that day, are you going to wake up and be like, I feel like shit, I'm on my period? You know, like, it's just like, maybe, I'm getting to the point that maybe I would, but I think, one thing I've said is I do not want to trade palatability for authenticity. That if somebody is going to reject me for being like my full expressed self, okay.
So you must have had rejection in the past.
I think that I was afraid of rejection and feeling like maybe I would get myself into a situation where, you know, I don't think that it's like performing in a disingenuous way. Like, we contain multitudes, and like maybe it's like I'm only letting one part of myself shine because I know that that's the part that's not going to be rejected. And so, yeah, I mean, I think it's been more like a fear of rejection than the rejection itself, and like performing a certain level of perfectionism to like stave off that rejection. And then like ending up in situations or in certain groups where I don't even really want to be there because I didn't like necessarily express myself fully, and then I'm in a situation where I only feel like a part of myself is present, and having to only like express that part, or I let more of myself become more expressed over time, and people are like, oh, I don't know if that's what I signed up for.
And are you talking about in intimate relationships or just in
like work, in the world, volunteer, like all those kinds of things? And I think I woke up this year and I was like, I am not going to trade palatability for authenticity.
Okay.
And I even said that I was asked to be like a trustee of an organization. There's like an informal interview, and I walked into it like with this whole like, man, Mari, like it would be so cool if you got rejected and were okay with it. And because I was like, I don't know if I really have the time for this, and I want them to know like what you see is what you get. Like, this isn't just a piece of me. This is all of me. And if you don't like it up front, better that we learn this now.
Right.
And so I was so proud of myself because I went in just like fully expressed. I even said, look, everything I'm going to talk to you about today is coming from this place of I'm not trading authenticity for palatability. And I was rejected. And it still feels like kind of a bummer. Like we still like, and I was like, that was kind of my goal. I wasn't like trying to be contrarian or shitty, but I was just like, I had like certain like
so funny. SAT word cuss word. SAT word cuss word. SAT word cuss word.
Or like a lot of bleeps in the in between. But it's like I don't even know where I was with that. Like I just it still hurt, even though I was like kind of put myself there as a goal. Like I wanted to get myself inured or more okay with not feeling like I'm having to like sacrifice parts of myself to be accepted in certain places.
But you're a social worker. You know that if that is the what you woke up with today, there's a wound from before that you're trying to heal, or you're
I mean, I think that...
Is there a time in your life that you didn't do that you were not really authentic?
That's a hard one for me to answer, and I don't know if I'm like deluding myself in saying that, because I so pride myself in being authentic that and I think that it's less that it's authentic and more that it's like fractional, like that only a piece of myself gets to present. Because I think we all do it, but I don't think we're all a bunch of liars out here performing. But I think that we're like, we know that saying these nice things, that like I think there's a difference between being nice and being kind. Like these nice things will have me be liked, but sometimes the nice things aren't always the kind things. Like especially as being a social worker, like I want to advocate for things I see as being unjust and unfair. And sometimes that doesn't come across as nice. I think it's the kind thing to do, but sometimes like when we're not nice, we get rejected. But I would rather know that I was living by my values and getting rejected than belying those values. And that's such a struggle for me, because like we in our culture, like it's very important for us to be nice. And sometimes I feel like being nice is not righteous, and I want to be righteous.
Yeah, justice is definitely
very important to me.
A core value for you. Risk, absolutely.
But I feel like, and I don't want to be like evasive about like the vulnerable place of like maybe like a wounding that comes from. I mean,
well, let's go further back.
Yeah,
like your childhood. Tell us a little bit about growing up. The values that were around you and how they shaped you.
So my parents owned barbecue restaurants in Memphis, Tennessee, and I worked in them since I was like 5 years old in some ways. And so I grew up with a really strong work ethic, like a very strong sense of industriousness. And that's also something that I've had to work on easing up. That, in our society, and I'm not unique in this, like our value is so tied into, our worth is so tied into our productivity, and like trying to let go of some of that. I mean, obviously like entrepreneurship was modeled for me, and I find myself in that route as well. But in terms of like a wounding around rejection, I don't know. I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is my mom is Jewish and my dad is Catholic. And, there's like, obviously they're different religions in many ways, although a lot of people are always like, oh, you have guilt, like guilt wired all the way across the board. I was like, oh yeah. I'm very motivated by guilt. I think like...
well, but guilt would be not being authentic, right? Like...
I'm doing it out of guilt. Yeah, for sure. Oh, yeah. I agree with that. Or like, I'm not being a good enough social worker and like not setting boundaries because this person is deserving. And totally guilt motivated for sure. Guilt, like my parents were super hard workers. So I think like, and that was really modeled for me. So like if I want to chill on the weekend and play Nintendo, like I don't, I've gotten a lot better about it. Like, I'm a lot more relaxed about it. But there was a point in time where I would feel guilty for, not being productive.
Mm-hmm.
But I think between the religious split, I went to certain schools where I was a heathen because I wasn't one or the other, and being saved, asking me, or trying to save me. Like, I spent the night at a friend's house and her mom took me to get saved overnight. My mom was not having that. My Jewish mother was not having that, coming home being saved the next day. So I think, maybe I'm incredibly grateful for having been I went to church with my grandparents, I went to synagogue with my others, and I loved being exposed to that diversity of thought, and I think it's really, really shaped me. But I think that there's also, growing up in the South, if I wasn't conforming to a certain ideology, there was a little bit of othering in that way, or non-acceptance. I don't think that that's probably my most profound wound by any stretch of the imagination, but it's definitely what comes to mind first. And just and I mean, there's so many people that that's a minor difference, and I think it just kind of speaks to this universal need that we have to belong. And especially scary when we feel like we've exposed all of ourselves and completely, and then we're rejected. Is just, I don't even know if it has to be significantly traumatic for it to be painful.
Yeah.
To be rejected.
To be rejected.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you're being authentic.
When you're being, and especially, it's one thing, I think it's really safe to perform because that at the end of the day, you didn't reveal all of yourself. And if you're going to be rejected after a performance,
right.
So be it.
Right.
Yeah.
For sure. So you watched me struggle with my faith.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you've kind of been on a journey that is not conforming, right? Tell us a little bit about how your faith shows up for you, or contributes to who you are, your mental strength.
I had a therapy session. I was on the therapist side of that session this morning, and it's funny because this really lovely human being was talking about this really profound sense of connection they have to their ancestors, and how they will invoke their ancestors before they go to bed when they have a problem, and their ancestors will show up in their dreams.
Well, and you've seen me experience that with Rich and Maya.
Totally. Yeah. And I think, so I experienced that with Christy in a way that was really profound and kind of trickled into an experience I had as well. And I think for me, listening, for you, for this person that I got to spend time with, such a lovely sense of spirituality that I'm I think that that's an area I could cultivate more of in my life. Sometimes I think my pragmatism gets in the way of something that could be bigger, and I'm open to it. And I think it's a part of my life that I could lean into more. I think let
me bring it back to authenticity.
Yeah.
Because I think growing up Catholic and Jewish, right? They are very much, we are right. Obviously, your parents, so there was this, kind of rigid structure belief system, which didn't agree, right? And you are so about authenticity. You don't want to fake whatever it is you decide faith is for you. It has to be authentic.
So to that point, I did do some musing on this several months ago. I would say where I'm at right now, and also always open to it shifting, is I'm really a humanist in that the one thing I fundamentally believe is that I'm alive. And for me, what follows with that is I have this certain honoring of that, of exploring what it means to be alive, which is I'm a documentary filmmaker, so it's trying to sate that curiosity, and a social worker. I'm a constant collector of stories about life. And I think that is really my spirituality, in that I feel like it's an absolute duty to always be learning. And I'm just so fortunate to have jobs, career,
Yeah.
if you will, like that.
And connection. I mean, that is
deeper connection. Like
that
I
is
feel
spiritual.
It feels really spiritual.
Yeah.
That's what I mean about being like humanist. It's like we're tapping into each other in this plane that feels bigger than us, like when we can go deep. And like I am so awkward with small talk. Like I don't know if you've noticed, but like I'm like really shitty at it. And it's not just a value, like I just suck at it. And so like fortunately
You're also resistant to deepness. I thought you would go deeper.
Like in this?
Yeah.
You like a core wounding.
Well, we all have wounds. We all have wounds, right? I think maybe you were like, there might be multiple small wounds, and you're like, well, this isn't really a big wound, right? I don't know. I don't know all of your story, but I was surprised that you didn't just whatever.
Like, that's really interesting.
Because I know you like to go deep.
Yeah.
But do you like to go deep with others, not necessarily with yourself? Because you definitely go deep with others as a therapist, as a filmmaker for someone else.
Oh, I think I like go deep.
Behind the camera is easier.
Behind the camera, for sure. Like I think there's I go neurotically deep. Like it's like time to like like the whole Carl Jung thing, like what we resist persists. Sometimes like you just need to like go eat a sandwich, because like I will sit in the muck for a period of time of analysis that like it can be too much. And then it's time to go do something else. Like I would say like I'm very candid with like my vulnerabilities with Amber, with my partner. Probably her more share than she deserves of that. But I mean, I
that's
guess
safe.
It's safe. Yeah, it's really safe. I think what I would say, like part of what's different about this whole authenticity and palatability thing, if I'm like being like really frank about what the vulnerability is like really terrible self-talk. Really terrible self-talk. Like wake up at 3 a.m, just like, oh, I effed this up, like, and like reviewing the playbook.
Thank you for being honest.
Because we're all doing it. Well, I think maybe that's why I didn't even mention it, like in some ways, because I don't feel like I'm so unique in saying that, but I think like it's easy to forget that, like not everyone necessarily names that, but no, like I will complete candor, like my negative self-talk can be absolutely horrifying. And that's actually, when I say that this year has been so much better, that self-talk has been so much better.
But I think it's important for us to do this because we're talking about empowering women, and I think women are more likely to get into these spirals of the negative talk. And we look at someone like yourself, successful filmmaker, social worker, you're helping people, you've gotten control of that. That's and the same thing happens with me. People look at me, they look at my story, they see what I'm doing, and they're like, oh, I could never be like that. Like it feeds their negative talk, right? Because they're like, oh, I'm not as good as that person that I'm, looking at.
Totally. I mean, I think even as a therapist, like I will level with certain folks all the time. Like, I do some of this shit too.
Right.
Not even some of it. I do this shit too, right? That like, I think one thing that is really important to me is like this idea that our liberation is tied up in the liberation of all people that we work with. Like, I am not the helper and that person is the help. Like we're co-conspirators. Conspirators.
Back to the word connection.
Yeah, connection, co-conspirators and collaborators. There's things like as a therapist, like what I was just saying about the person I worked with this morning and them talking about like their spirituality. It's like, oh, I could cultivate more of that. Like I think that like there should be a democratization of the process where like we as the mental health folk should be walking into every interaction asking like, what do I have to learn here today? And every session I learned stuff.
Yeah.
And there's times when I was younger in my career where I would look at my like competence as like, oh my gosh, I do that shit. I think I do that shit worse than they do that shit. And I like, you would think, oh, like, am I qualified to even be doing this?
Yeah.
And I think like what I recognized is we all do this, and it's so much the human experience.
Yeah.
I don't know where exactly I was going with that.
No, you did it.
Yeah.
The negative self-talk like that, and getting the confidence and power to be authentic and to stop the shit.
Well, I think even part of like maybe like maybe not always revealing all of myself in all situations is maybe to protect from some of that negative self-talk at 3 in the morning. Like, is it worth it? And you know what I have to say about that, and again, where I am right now, is maybe it's not always worth it. Like, maybe there's only certain milieu and certain people that even deserve all of yourself.
Right.
But I think like one thing I've gotten more clear about and like why I just like love all of my work right now is I've been really actively choosing like things and situations, and this was part of me being okay with that rejection of where I can feel safe to show up completely whole. Right. If it's a place that I don't feel like I can, then it's not a place for me. And so I've been more and more clear about like what rooms I want to be in and like saying no.
And that's happened to me recently too, because I'm in these leadership groups and reading leadership books and trying to grow a business, and there's this mindset that you can't be friends with your employees. And you know, I spent a period of time kind of separating myself a little bit, and I just really realized like I'm not showing up for work every day if I don't like these people and they're not my friends.
Totally.
So even if it's not the right business choice, I'm building this.
It's yours.
You know, I want to be authentic. I don't, you know, and so big shift.
That's cool.
You lose people over it, but that's okay. Because
Totally.
It's authentic.
Totally. I mean, and that's like you putting in all the sweat equity to run a business. Like you should at least get to like decide what values and how you're going to shape it.
Who I spend 8 hours a day with.
Yeah, 100%. I feel emphatically the same way. You know, I work like in a more like malleable way, I think. I'm not institutionalized in any way, but I emphatically feel that way. I think, where was this? Oh, okay. So Amber actually sent me this really cool Substack that was talking about like shame spirals. And it was talking about pride and shame being two sides of the same coin, and that they're both egocentric. And I was like, oh, wow. Like, why do we think, like, when we're berating ourselves at 3 a.m. that somehow, like, we're inhuman and above making mistakes? Like, there is still, like, a certain egocentrism in that as much as pride. And I was like, that is so valid. And
and pride to think that you wouldn't make mistakes, right? Like, you could be perfect, right?
Right. So it's like, it's that same coin. And it's like, oh, yeah, that is kind of egocentric of me to be waking up that like I'm like so perfectly inhuman that I should be impervious to making mistakes, or I'm not human and shouldn't make a mistake. And so I think that was really helpful to read and remind myself. Yeah.
Good. What do you think people in general misunderstand about mental strength?
That you don't have negative self-talk. Or that it's like an end goal, you know? Because like I think that was like even, I was like flipping over the word like mental strength.
Like that someday you just get there. And
and then it's like you've achieved, you're at the top of the pinnacle, and like you'll never fall off again.
Right.
I think, because I was like, oh shit, she asked me to do this. Am I mentally strong? Like, I was even asked, like, what is mental strength, you know? I think our willingness, like you even being like, oh, I thought you would go deeper than that. I think our willingness to not like even just like go deep as much as it is to shine light in dark spaces, I think is a really helpful in that mental strength. You know, as a social work professor, there was an article I read that really struck me that I know you've done a lot of work in this space, and it was on post-traumatic growth. And it defines resilience as like bouncing back to baseline, but it defines the growth as like exceeding that baseline. And it talked about like some of the traits that people have when they're able to achieve that post-traumatic growth. And one is openness. And like one is like a certain level of extroversion, which I feel cautious even saying that, because I don't think it means you need to like show up to every party, but I think what it means is like a level in which you're willing to reveal yourself. And that really struck me. And I think like even like knowing like you're filming this, I don't know who's going to see it, and having a willingness to be like, yeah, I have like really shitty negative self-talk, and actually kind of take some of the power out of it. And yeah, like I'm just willing to show up. And I think I've been willing to show up as imperfect in the past, but I would beat myself up more for it. But I think what is different now is like, okay, like maybe I showed up fully myself, like in a potential new friendship, and they don't call me back. And I'm like, and so like the interpretation is like not what can I have done differently or how did I mess it up? It's more like, oh, well, that wasn't a friendship that was meant to be. Okay, I'm glad I know.
Yeah.
You know, and I think it's like more willingness like to make peace with, I don't know if it's just outcomes or like not everyone's gonna love me or even like me, you know? And we say that like since people are being kids, like that, how do you actually truly become okay with that? And I don't know. I just think getting older and having experience.
It's a journey, right? Like you have experience of doing things. So you had kind of an aha, you know, couple months here of I'm going to battle this negative with, you know, authenticity, making choices, not caring if I'm rejected. What are some other things that you're doing? So people that are watching, you know, mostly women, probably have their own negative dialogue.
Yeah.
What would you say to them to get started on this journey? Or maybe they're in the journey and kind of feel stuck. How do we push through to the next level of control over that, right? And it's a level, it's a journey. You're always gonna.
You know, I don't feel like I can like give unilateral advice and saying like I think this is what would work for everybody, but I can give anecdotal like suggestions about what's been working for me lately. And it's interesting because like I'm not really trained in parts work, but I'm familiar with it. And I've noticed myself lately, like, okay, 2026 is here. And like that negative self-talk starts creeping in. And when I say like I'm like neurotic with self-analysis, like where I think some people could spend more time being self-reflective, I can spend less. And so I'm okay with telling myself, we're not doing this. And that sounds cheesy and like really overly simple, but at 3 a.m, as opposed to being caught up in like the self-abuse and like indulging it and how I could do this different, or I'm an idiot or whatever else comes up, I'm like, we are not doing this. And I bring up the parts work piece because it's really interesting, the pronoun that I chose of we. Because I think what it's saying is like we contain all of these multitudes and parts. And there is like a part, a voice that I don't need right now. And I know some people would say, love that part, welcome that part. And I'm not saying that that's wrong or like that's just not what has been working for me, that I'm just like, you can be quiet right now. And then I'm just like, I love myself.
Well, and sometimes when you allow yourself to do too much of that, you know that the science behind rumination, you're actually creating neural pathways that are strengthening those negative things.
And so like short-circuiting it feels really important to me to train myself differently. And I think, you know, something that I think might be happening neurobiologically is like we're in our amygdala when we are in that self-abuse place, like, you know, fear of probably ultimately abandonment or rejection if you're peeling back the layers of the onion. But I think like when we label like the process of what's happening, we bring our prefrontal cortex back online and we're more resourced. So even being able to say something like, I'm looping, it seems really simple, but we're resourcing ourselves more with more of our brain when we do that. And so I think when I even say we're not doing that anymore, and that's just my phrase, I think I'm bringing my lid back online.
Not today.
Not today. So you do something similar in that way. Not today.
Not today.
Is that effective?
It is very effective. But I do, you know, and this is the whole mentally strong method, right? Like I do say, okay, this weekend I might have to take some time for grief, for self-evaluation, or, you know, sitting by the fire and doing my journaling and meditation because it's coming up, right? But not today. I can't do it today.
Yeah, like I think sometimes we like find compartmentalization, like it's usually like a pejorative term, but it's there for a reason. Like not every moment is a good moment to be grieving.
Right.
You know, like, do
Right.
you want to be grieving, like, you know, when, I don't, in
Yeah,
the middle
yeah.
of your workday when you're administratively trying to
Right.
get something done? Like, is this the place for it? But
Yeah.
then you are really good at making the time and place
Yeah,
for it.
and I think that's what's missing between kind of the masculine sense of what mental strength is. They think yes, you have to have it in your box and you have to keep it in the box. But we all have a threshold, and we've all seen, you know, even men who seem to be able to keep it all compartmentalized, you know, kind of have symptoms of PTSD or, you know, anxiety, anger are more prevalent in men. But like taking the time to do the self-analysis, but not negatively, like, you know, and making sure that you're nurturing yourself and compassion to yourself. But like you said, there's people that probably should be doing more self-analysis, right?
Yeah.
So self-analysis is not bad. Negative criticism is what's, you know, keeping you in that loop or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So.
Agreed.
Yeah. So one last question. What are you currently learning in this journey of mental strength?
I think, you know, thinking about like our connection and how we know each other, I have been thinking about grief. And interestingly, even in my sessions and in the work that I'm doing, the word decide keeps coming up. And I really appreciate the etymology of that word, which decide means to cut off. And when we cut off, we're cutting off infinite other possibilities. And when I think about it that way, I recognize that life is a series of griefs. Like even when we choose joy or we lean into joy and say that this is the choice I'm making, we are also cutting off all the other things it could have been. And even joy is finite, right? Like, so even when we have joy, we have grief that it ends.
Yeah.
And I think that more, and this is just like why I have like such deep respect for the work that you're doing and sharing your story, is that I think more comfortability around grief conversations affect all
Because it's
aspects of
all-
our life. It's all of our
grief.
life.
That's what actually came up in my meditation this morning. Of it started with a negative talk of like, you know, my dreams don't come true, right? This was my little loop this morning. And, you know, and of course the big grief things came. Oh, you know, you dream that your children will do this, and then you dream that they're going to be healed, and then you dream, and these things didn't happen. But then I realized that if you just keep going, even someone without major grief has gone through multiple griefs, right? You know, I talk to parents of adult children all the time, right? You know, that we have this idea of the choices we want them to make. And, you know, we're disappointed, but we don't want to act disappointed because because we don't want to make them feel like judged, or, you know, and so there's this constant thing going on in a parent's head, and it's these micro griefs along the way of
Expectations.
Expectations. And we all have expectations. You have expectations in relationships. You know, we talked about this in the documentary of, you know, my husband, great man, great character, but there was lots of little griefs along the way. That happens in a lot of marriages, not just ones with big grief at the end, right?
Yeah.
Like, so grief is big, and I think everybody is experiencing it.
Everyone is experiencing it, and I think like the grief that you've experienced is just like really, it's like so concretized that it's easy for us to think that's grief.
Right.
And I'd be curious your thoughts on this, but like I know we've talked about like in some ways it feels like our culture is like averse to talking about death. And like what I feel like you've said,
because it's the spiritual thing too. Because we, you know, even, and I feel very comfortable talking to you, but even then it was like, well, I don't know what I believe, and there's this, like if there's, it's easy when you're in a shared faith. You're
to
going
have
to
those
this,
conversations.
you're going to this church, and this is what we believe happens after death, right? And so then we can have those in this
That's a
intimate
great
conversation,
point.
but it's harder to have it when there's different beliefs, and then there's this, air of we're not supposed to talk about,
Yeah.
Don't talk about politics or religion or, it goes downhill or whatever. And so
That's such a great
there's,
point.
And you cannot talk about grief without addressing spiritual.
That's such an important point, and
Yeah.
we live in like such a a rich and diverse religious environment, and I hadn't the thought of just it could be stepping into territory that's antithetical to someone's belief system makes so much sense. And I think in trying to protect children, we don't have frank conversations around death. And I years ago picked up this book in Germany that was a kid's book that just characterized death in such a beautiful way, and just was essentially calling death life's twin. And that with every life, death comes, as the twin in the door. And I feel I often wonder if how much mental strength could be built if we very early on had more and more frank conversations around death and endings. And something that really...
but you have to be able to have those discussions with your children. You have to know what you believe. Right?
What you believe around death.
Yeah.
I mean, I think...
So, and I think that hesitates people because many people don't...
What do I know?
Yeah, do I even know? Yeah. So it's hard. And then the other bad part about grief, and you've heard me say this before, is the 5 stages of grief is BS, right? It's not this linear and then you're done, right? Right. And so people have been taught, I mean, they teach the 5 stages of grief even in high school, right? That this is what you do. There's 5 stages and then you're done. And if you have a series of micro griefs, what does that mean? And then you just think time is supposed to take it away. And
I think it's interesting because I think that I do where I've landed in terms of my making sense of death. Maybe it's not even what I don't know if I've gotten into what afterlife even looks like, but if there is one, I don't know. But one thing that struck me when I was much younger is I think it was maybe it was Plato that talked about the immortals and the gods and how they didn't have any beauty because they didn't have impermanence. Things are precious and beautiful to us because they're finite. Is this magical play that you just thought was the coolest play in the world, if you sat in it day after day for infinity, would you find it to be so precious? And that's where I think about that all the time, that I'm when I feel joy or I'm moved by something really beautiful, whether it's awe of the human experience or moral goodness or the environment, and I recognize that it's my finitude and that it's my death that actually makes things beautiful, and would I actually choose to be here forever if I couldn't have beauty in my life? And I was no. So joy and preciousness and beauty all come with death. And it makes to me it helps me befriend death in a different way, as though it's this just awful thing that I want to stay as far away from as possible. No, death is what makes what I have possible.
There's belief systems that talk about soul contracts and reincarnation of you're choosing to come and experience this because of that.
Yeah. So in regard to what I'm learning is to grasp less tightly. And that's even just being okay with being rejected is to and I think that's a lot of getting to do the work that I've done with you is having to really think more and more about grief and death. And I think that even just allowing myself to take risks, knowing that that none of this lasts forever, for so much as I know. And I don't want to grasp too tightly, because no matter how tightly I grasp, it's ephemeral. And I have to make peace with that. Yeah.
That is perfect. I'm Dr. B. I'm a psychiatric nurse practitioner with over 25 years of clinical experience, but as you've heard, I've actually had my own grief and trauma. I'd love for you to watch the documentary, which could come up next, but also I teach on mental strength. I not only have the professional credentials for that, but I've lived it and I continue to live it. So click the link in the description to learn about the Mentally Strong Method.